And welcome to TNM Coaching Unplugged, Zoran Todorovic Interconnected Podcast. We're so grateful and happy that you're with us today as we have these exceptional guests. I mean, all our guests are stars and wonderful people who inspire you to elevate your thinking, elevate your being, transform your life, transform your business to the next level or beyond. And we always are so happy to have people that are coming like shining stars, but today we really have a star. And I'm so grateful and happy that Jurgis Didžiulis is joining us today. He is recognized by his stage name, Jurgis Did. He's a dynamic, multifaceted artist whose creative journeys define conventional boundaries. He had a career that spans from the 8 years in creative industry, and he has also earned a reputation as a true visionary, seamlessly blending his passion for music and social phenomena into unique, transformative artistic experiences. He is driven by profound mission. He seeks to elevate consciousness in the world when emotional intelligence and community are paramount. His rich cultural heritage and diverse professional backgrounds, including involvement in Eurovision Song Contest, UA consultancy, enables him to connect authentically to the audience from all backgrounds. And he's here to inspire people, to empower people, to foster the culture of positivity and unity that is crucial for our humanity at this moment in time. It doesn't matter if you work in a big organization, if you're listening to this as an HR executive, leader, if you're a social entrepreneur, if you run your own business, if you're a coach or consultant, all the diversities of people who are listening to this podcast will enjoy having Jurgis with us today. So welcome, Jurgis. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you for the beautiful intro, Zoran.
Well, isn't that cool? I mean, your CV, it's fantastic. And the theme of today's conversation is this a beautiful term that you shared with me, which is exceptional togetherness. You know, how can we foster this exceptional togetherness in the organizational fabric when we work in a small or big organization in our teams? How we can create this something special that gels people together, that can create performance, engagement, empowerment, results, and everything that we really want to see in today's universe, in today's reality. And how can we evolve the culture of the organization to the next level and beyond? So my first question to you is this exceptional togetherness. How did you come up with that? What happened in your work? And what was inspiring that term?
It's good question. Well, first, I'd love to give the listeners a bit of context because it's important to know where a person comes from and why you stumble upon the need for such terms or you know what trajectory you're on that brings you to these eureka moments. So I worked in the music industry for a very long time in Lithuania. I was very successful. I did very well. And as a child, I had an affinity towards music, but more the social part of music. I never studied, like I can't read notes properly. I studied a little bit of jazz. But what I was really intrigued by was this kind of spell that people get into or the spell that music puts on human beings and how it affects the way we interact, what we dress, how we dress, our belief systems. And funnily enough, I became so disenfranchised with the music industry, you know, with the music I had to perform and what I had to make ends meet, that I had to let it go because it wasn't what music was for me. And funnily enough, after I did an MBA, which was, again, it was my family, which have they have a background in entrepreneurship and owning and managing companies. They said, do something useful. And the beautiful thing about business is that if you do it right, you're really thinking about what creates value for other people, you know? And if you are in service to other human beings, you will create something of value to them. And then understanding exactly what was missing in gatherings, when we listened to music. I just basically felt that music was not being used to its full potential. And that led me down the rabbit hole of organizational culture and beliefs and behaviors that form us before the institutional aspect, right? So I give the example, like, you know, when you come to somebody's house, you don't see the rules somewhere, like don't smoke, don't dance on the furniture, don't talk to girls you don't know. None of this is on, but you kind of feel that there's certain rules and roles that you have to play. And the funny thing is that they're completely implicit. Nobody expresses them, but they're what really rule, that group of people. Which was in previous conversations, I've told you that for me, it's sometimes, how do you make the invisible visible? How do you really show people that before operating as an organization, we operate as an organism? And so the idea is that we've had this intelligence as simians, as over-evolved apes, for millions of years. As human beings, we've had it for hundreds of thousands of years. And so there is a way of tapping into a collective intelligence, or a way of weaving collective fiction, as Yuval Harari would say, that we are missing and we're ignoring. And when we're talking about pivoting organizations, or motivating people, or even, at the current conundrum of the planet that we need to shift, I find that people are not talking about culture. And the problem is that culture sounds so boring. It's like,
yeah.
And even worse than culture is that it's confused, because one is culture as beliefs and behaviors, and the other is culture as creative expression or forms of entertainment. It's the same thing with love. Talking about love is very difficult when you don't know what kind of love you're talking about. Brotherly love, fatherly love, romantic love. And I think with culture, we have the same problem. And for me, it's one of the most underappreciated technologies we have that can be leveraged for the deepest transformation. And so for me, exceptional togetherness is like when we enter a moment where we see each other as human beings, and we move down, again, there's a very beautiful description of how our brains and our thinking works, that it goes from reptilian brain, right? That again, you operate as a reptile to fight and flight responses in a very primordial, instinctive manner, to more cognitive driven, intellectual things. And so my whole idea is like, let's move deeper into not the primitive primal reptilian, but let's go back a little bit. Let's take a step back. Let's enter a space where you're no longer the CEO. You're no longer the leader on paper. Let's see what real beliefs and behaviors are being woven here. And what we realize is that you can reprogram people, or in other words, people can reprogram themselves very quickly just by experiencing a eureka moment of seeing who's who in a musical circle. Who is empowering? Who is overcoming their fears? Who is supportive? Who are people afraid of? And so for me, that moment of exceptional togetherness is just a moment where you go, wow, we're humans after all.
Yeah.
And it's a eureka moment, because often it's funny. People ask me, can we do, I do these interactions. We've called them community flux over the years, which is entering an elevated state of co-created flow. And some people say, well, listen, can we maybe, do some more analysis? Can we, talk to the HR a little bit more? And I always do thorough preparation. I always talk to the people before doing, these interactions. But what I realize is that more than really guiding a process, I want to put people in that state where they go, wow, this is us. This is us having fun. This is us, which have been working together for maybe 15 years, and we've never smiled at one another. And here we're smiling. Here is us feeling that we're part of something, and that these notes that are coming out of our mouths, the singing, which I haven't sung in 20 years, or the last time I sung, someone told me to shut up because my voice wasn't beautiful. This is being empowered by my colleagues. Yeah. And that is profound stuff. And I think also the reason why I love doing it in circle and with others is because you can experience transcendence on your own. You can have a transcendental experience, and you go back to your company, to your cluster, to your tribe, of individuals, and they'll think it was a hallucination. They'll think that you've gone crazy. But when you experience that collectively, it's a truth that can no longer be unseen. Mm-hmm. And for me, that idea of like, okay, let's have that moment, that eureka moment is the main thing I deliver. That eureka moment, wow, we are humanity aggregating potential and having fun. And this feels really good. Because our oxytocin is triggered, the dopamine is triggered, you feel great. I always do is like, how do you feel now after the experience? And they're like, wow, we feel amazing. I said, good, because being in tribe is also a human need. You're satisfying a lot of very deep emotional needs through these kinds of things. So yeah, maybe that's a longer response than you had expected. But in essence, exceptional togetherness is just reminding ourselves that we are humans amongst humans.
Mm-hmm.
And music is a conduit.
And new music is a conduit. Beautiful response. Thank you so much for that. And when the people get into this space of community flux and you begin guiding them to the process, how do we get people to be vulnerable enough to be able to step into that space? As you said, you can see a team member who is taking over, or somebody who's shy and somebody who's supportive, somebody who wants to sing and somebody who wants to hum, or somebody who wants to get something, but there is this kind of, can I really do this? Can I really be myself in this context of being with my colleagues or peers or collaborators or fellow business partners? It doesn't matter where they come from. How do we get them there to really kind of, I can be myself. I can be human after all.
Man, here's the funny thing is that there are manuals for being human. There's people who write books. I don't remember who was the guy who wrote How to Make Friends and Influence People. Who was this guy?
I know the book, but
I don't remember his name right.
Well, I'll Google it while you're talking.
I remember reading the book. I remember reading the book and going, shit, if you don't understand this, you're pretty messed up. It's like how to stroke the cheek of a woman or how to hug your children. It's what's called tacit knowledge. It's things that you can only pass on by being with another person in a room. So I can give a lot of advice. I can give a lot of tips. But the only way to become a better human is by exercising humanity, putting yourself in situations where, you deal with the subtleties. You deal with like, that person's uncomfortable. How can I make them feel a little bit better? And sure, I can explain tons of principles, but that's also the idea of these musical circles. And it's funny because here in Ibiza, when we do this work for companies, they experience it, they love it, they have a eureka moment. But when you go back to these circles consistently, you start learning a lot about humanity, society, community, just by observing. Just by, that person's singing, they're being a little bit annoying. Who's going to tell them that they should shut up? Or that person's out of tune. Or that person's drumming, I don't like that person's drumming. When I find myself doing in these situations, it's just let it play out. Let it play out. Mm-hmm. Guide it as little as you can, because humanity will lead you to points where there's maybe some tension, maybe some conflict, but that conflict is there to serve as a pantomime, as theater for other people to learn, right? I will say this, that in circle, usually the people who show the most resistance are both the people who need the most help and have the most to gain. So I've done, Zoran, I've done these circles for all kinds of people, bankers, people in weapons, people in, I've done it for royals, I've done it for presidential gatherings, I've done it for all kinds of levels. And the funny thing is that yes, there's so much more at stake. People are so much more uptight, but that's why they want it and they need it more than anybody else. They need it. They're like, the moment that they can say, they feel acknowledged that, yes, I am such and such, I am in this and this role, but I can take off that mask. Mm-hmm. They want to take off the mask. The same thing that after a conference, everybody wants to go like this and have a beer or a wine and really speak their mind. This is kind of what we look for. And again, that's done through really looking at people, observing, empowering when need be, letting people be when need be. It's again, and what I find is that we could do a whole book, but it takes maybe 30 or 40 minutes in circle for you to get it like that. I've had musicians which, for example, classical musicians, which can't improvise. They come to a circle, I don't know what to do. And after 10, 15 minutes, they're like, okay, I get it. But once, that's a beautiful thing. Once they got it, they're done. They don't have to come back. They're like, I get it. And then they take that with them, So for me, it's kind of opening the doors of possibility and noticing. Now, again, I'm kind of tempted, to say, oh, look, I can explain this and that. And again, 40 minutes chatting with you won't be enough. But what you do find is that we do have these behaviors naturally imprinted in us, and I'm pretty certain on a biological level. And for example, there's a reason. I'm reading a very beautiful book called The Musical Human, and it says that the reason we like rhythms which are like this, dun, da, dun, like 1, 2, is because we're bipedal. Naturally, our organism asks for this kind of music. The reason that, for example, we love 90 BPM kind of, music, or, certain is because our heartbeat, it kind of, when it's a little bit excited, it's a 90 BPM, right? And so the beautiful thing is that you start to see that a lot of this is not only psychology or influenced by our culture, or the educational background or our context, but a lot of it is informed by biology. And so even if I start speaking quiet to you right now, like this, you're going to want to talk like that to me. And the pacing of the way I speak will be mimicked by you as well. This is one of the pivotal things that we do with music. And I say that music is being misused because music is entertainment, is a spell that is being cast on you. You listen to Mozart, Bach, Kylie Minogue, reggaeton. That is affecting you, and you're being put into that vibration, right? Into that both emotional, physical, kind of combination of emotions and sound. But when you're in training, which is what I love, is like when I'm taking the information from you, I'm taking information from that, and we're all creating this spell together, which in my opinion is, again, that technology of saying, yes, my voice makes a difference. Yes, my clapping makes a difference. Yes, I can be a part of it. And which again, then that becomes a metaphor for what a person can bring to an organization. Say, yeah, I can speak up. I do it with kindness. I do it with love. I do it with a little bit of humor. I do it knowing that I won't suffer grave consequences if I say something stupid. Yeah. I forgot the question.
It's beautiful what you're sharing. We feel the energy. Absolutely, we feel the transmission. And nowadays, a lot of organizations, I'm just going to move into that a little bit just to get your take on that. A lot of the organizations are talking about tribes, about the tribal culture, about us connecting on a deeper level, really, really, really being there with one another, especially after the whole COVID story, when people get disjointed, disconnected, went to the hybrid way of working, insular, detached from one another. Like you lose that fabric of togetherness, and there's new lingo. Even in the banks, I work in the banks nowadays. They talk about banking tribe. They talk about tribal culture. So, what is that inside of ourselves that is looking for that tribal culture, and how would you perceive the tribe? Like if you were to do the community flux or the organizational flux, and you bring people together. What happens in this initiation, in their togetherness as a tribe, and why is that word so important nowadays?
Again, tribe is going into a deeper programming, a more human programming. It's saying, some people say we need to build an organization. I repeat, build an organism, where people are in flow. And the words are changing. For example, I have sold big packages to big companies. Right? Several fluxes at a time, or, really going, because we're producing a vibe, a vibe, a feeling of this is our vibe, which again, it's very difficult to describe. A culture is a lovely word, but you sometimes need very concrete examples of what it smells like, what it feels like. How do we behave in that context? Mm-hmm. And it's true. Like, for example, if you're amongst bankers, and somebody starts talking about some assets, which will go up in price, their eyes light up and they're like, oh, what kind of financial vehicles can we conjure around this, right? So there are behaviors that are innate, to certain groups of people. And again, for me, it's like, okay, what are we looking for? So I'll give you some examples of this. And first and foremost is when you're engineering an experience, you have to know the values. And you have to know what is the messaging, what they really believe in. So we were pitching something for a real estate agency in Dubai very recently. And they had their usual kind of like, yes, we believe in prosperity for everybody and and, increasing the well-being of, the whole region, which when I read it on paper, I'm like, this is generic bullshit, It's like, of course. And when I met the guys, I'm like, because you could tell what they were was agents with an attitude. They were like, yeah, we're going to make money. Yeah, we see the opportunity. Yeah, we're going to miss some sleep, which goes against the whole well-being culture. But I could see that was what had gotten them where they are. So I told the guy, I said, look, it's the right attitude. It's the right attitude, right? It's the right attitude that makes you, know how to talk to a client. It's the right attitude that fosters trust. It's the right attitude that tells you when to let go of something and when to pursue it like a dog with a bone. Mm-hmm. And so that idea was very attractive. It's like, yes, that's the right attitude. So you find little words like, again, you might remember George Orwell, two legs bad, four legs good, right? You create these little things which become chants. You put those chants into the music, and then that starts permeating. You add a little bit of cognitive or mental structure or verbal structure, linguistic structure to the feeling. But the whole process really begins with just sitting down with people and understanding their problem. I dealt with a situation, believe it or not, and again, it's like I love that I can work on my feet, where it was something where the company was really happy that they'd gotten amazing results that year, and it's great. And 12 hours before, their parent company was going through restructuring. It had been announced that they're going to go through restructuring, and all of the branches were going to get, disrupted. And so then the message I brought was that you need to know your tribe. And again, really quickly talking to the people, well, how do we need to adapt it? It's like, you need to know your tribe. We give this really beautiful example of like when you're in a band, mm-hmm. You might be the singer, you might have the message, but the drummer, bass player, the keyboard player, the back end, they really need to feel what we're fighting for. And so that moment that I gave that example, it's like, no, this is not an orchestra where, you're being told what to do, but everybody needs to contribute. We had a very beautiful moment where, they said thank you, because they said, look, all of a sudden we see what people are really committed to a process, and what people are like, well, this is actually a good opportunity for me to leave. A vision of what the company had to pivot into. Again, emotional, because we didn't write everything down. There were no slides or anything, but they're like, yeah, I feel I can work through this problem with these people. And the other ones were like, well, actually, I'm not happy to begin. So
honesty, right? Transparency and honesty.
It's honesty, it's transparency. It's acknowledging that we're humans, that we have fears, that there are certain things that aren't working. And I, for example, really commend higher management. I don't know if you've realized, but higher management is very into their own self-improvement, into an understanding that you can only deliver high achieving results if you're aligned with your purpose, if you're feeling good, if your body's functioning well, if your mind is functioning well. And increasingly we see that there's C-suites, like whole teams, that they have to operate like a Navy SEAL team, where they have to know what this collective flow is, where there's almost a certain telepathy, and they're open to all these things. And then the funny thing with middle management is that it's all fear-driven. It's like, I fought 15 years to get here, 15 years, and now you want to change something? I was like, no. Or am I going to lose my job? Or what does that mean in terms of my workload? They're much more apprehensive to change. So just knowing that, and knowing that you got to talk to middle management a little bit differently. And also knowing that people all the way down the bottom of the food chain, which is also fun, they want to feel that they're part of something, but at the end of the day, the only thing they're interested in is the paycheck, So for them, any interaction is just like, oh, this is great. The company's spending money on us to have a good time. Great. Super. And we're getting something more. That's fine. Kind of understanding where these things hit. There has to be, again, 10 years of experience does a lot in really understanding what people need. And again, although I have an arsenal of activities, of games, of jokes, or kind of like even just kind of like situations you can put people into. If you're not tuned into what's really happening, you can't help them. You can't do anything.
So I know some of my listeners will ask this question, because you said the mid-management is driven by the fear, and I can see that. I can see the C-suite is driven by the purpose. They're like Navy SEALs. They really are wanting the best for the organization, even though that how people perceive them, it's projecting onto them and seeing that they're not really showing up in the way that people would love them to show up. But mid-management is challenging when it comes to the fear, job security. So when you get into that flux and you move the music around and get people around, and this frequency of fear that is present within the organizational culture, even the most brilliant organizations I work with, they would say, we're equalized, we're straightforward, we are matrix, there is no fear, everybody's free to be and do whatever they want to be. There is still this element of fear, especially in mid-management. How do you maneuver that frequency through the music? What do you do, and what this can deliver to elevate this inside of ourselves so that we can release, understand, transcend our fear?
Yeah. For me, the idea is that it's a spell. Think of it in terms of spell. Like money is kind of like a spell. It's like a belief system that we all believe in, right? And I think COVID was a very interesting thing where we felt that the spell had been broken. Now stay home, don't go anywhere. Like everything changes, and you're like, okay, well, what is family to me? What is well-being to me? What really matters to me? These moments when the spell is broken, most importantly, understand that you were under a spell. Like if you're in a highly hierarchical, very square institution, you're very careful with everything. At some point you say, let it go. And with the music, it's very easy because what you do is you distract people. So you start playing the guitar, say, hey, ladies and gentlemen, do you like some music? And they're like, yeah, we like music. You like a song? I say, yeah, that's a pretty nice song. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good song. Yeah, it sounds much better if you start clapping. And then they start clapping. It sounds actually much better if you start singing. They start singing. And by then, you've taken them as a spectator within certain rules and roles, and you move them to be active participants. I have a TEDx talk on this I did in Stockholm, which kind of made this point, is that all of a sudden you think that only this is possible, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, now all of these other things are possible because that no longer applies, even for a moment. And for me, again, is like, if I work, and I love to work with people who, as I said, sometimes they just hire me for smart entertainment or something that's relevant, or activation, or just give us a feel-good moment at the end of the event, or we have clients and partners and we need to feel that they, them to feel that we love them and, something like that. Okay, we do that. But if there's actually a process and there's someone in the company, whether it's a CEO or an HR manager, who's like, no, what we really need is then to take that momentum and start moving it. Because again, it's like exercise, right? You need to do it continuously for it to take effect. You need to create new beliefs and behaviors. And so working with someone in the organization that says, no, the long-term process will go in this direction, I sometimes say, Zoran, I'm like Mary Poppins. I jump in, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. You kind of analyze relationships in a bit of a different way, and then Mary Poppins is off, and the work is up to you. And I love that dynamic. I love that kind of idea that I did all I could do, and then now I have to go. Increasingly, we are working with people. For example, we've had inquiries of like top management that wants to come to Ibiza and say, we want to do 3-4 days here. Or companies that have involved me in 6 or 7 events because they're like, wow, that's really cool. And we kind of feel we still need that. We've had people who say, let's commission music so that when we play the music in the office, then we can go back to that vibe.
Yeah. It's a frequency. And you're absolutely amazing that what creates culture and creates vibe is the frequency, and music can define that frequency that we can all tune in. And once we tune in, then this space of togetherness is created because we vibrate on the same resonance, right?
Exactly. I mean, I love musical metaphysics. It's my passion, actually. But I don't talk about musical metaphysics when I'm in corporate environment. I just can't. It's like they'll think I'm crazy or they won't get it, and you have to stay within what's safe.
Yeah.
But vibration is vibration. Your heartbeat is a vibration. Thought, the activity of the brain can also be measured in vibrations, in alpha waves and gamma, in all kinds of waves, Emotion is also a vibration. Like here, if you mute yourself for 1 second, I can give you a very beautiful example. If I, there's a whole lot of information there. There's no words. you know? It's giving you a feeling of positive, of potential, of possibility. There's a very beautiful chord as well, which I play with. So this is a major chord, right? But if I change but one note, it adds a little bit of possibility, of mysticism. This is actually, if you remember Star Wars, they go da 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 da, and then when the credits finish, the camera pans down to a beautiful planet, and you hear this. You know? So that's poetry. That's just basically poetry through vibration. And that can be an emotion. If I were to play upbeat music, you'd feel that too. And the funny thing is that even now, as we continue to speak, you're still in the vibe of that thing.
I mean, that's why, totally. I mean, wow, it moves my soul and my heart, absolutely.
That's exactly it. So one of the principles we apply is economy of words.
Mm-hmm.
Economy of words. And the Kogis have a beautiful saying, which is speak less to say more. And I do believe that in many cases, when you enter a space and there's smile, it's like, for example, people say, we know community feels like this and it feels like that and it's this and it's that and it's when people are this. I say, okay, but that's like saying I have chocolate right here. It tastes a little bit bitter and sweet. I said, but let's actually taste it. And when you experience it, you both get the benefits of it being in you embodying that. So it speaks both to your mind and your physical being. So that's one of the beautiful things about music. And again, it's underrated. You know, when people say, oh no, this has to be serious. You know, this is not serious. This is just fun. So man, fun, and again, it's very important to know, fun demonstrates a certain condition of a team to both feel excitement and safe at the same time. Fun happens at the intersection of excitement and safe. And if you have that in a team, right, where people say, oh, we can feel both excited and safe, those are the best preconditions for performing, you know, where we can get excited about challenges and we can talk about it and I can still feel safe in this environment, you know? So when you have emotions or when you have all these things where, you know, you can't really describe with words, but you know you felt it, for me, that's much more powerful. And again, for me, it's difficult to sell it as well because I struggle, you know, and I have a beautiful website and we've done beautiful TEDx talks and I've done, you know, we've recorded many of my sessions, but when I only make sales when people experience it and they go, that was amazing. And I need that. Yeah. So for me, it's almost a curse because the goods are like, you have to taste the chocolate, right? To know how good it is.
Yes. I am going to make sure that the people taste the chocolate when it comes to you. And seeing all of your, you know, TED Talks and musical, you know, jam sessions and the fluxes so that people can really see it. Because I know that the decision makers sometimes do need to experience it. And some of the people can have this leap of faith and just jump into it because on a certain level, they know this is necessary. And what we know it's necessary nowadays for all the organization is that this deeper level of togetherness. And I love what the definition of fun in organizational setting, which is somebody feeling excitement and somebody feeling safe at the same time. And when you are there, you know, with the excitement and safety, you can then create everything that you want to create. And we all want that. We want to belong in that space when we feel this, and we want to feel creative and excited ourselves all the time. So it's an invitation for everybody who is listening to step into that space because we need it. You and I can talk forever. You know, this is one of the podcasts. You know, we need to maintain the time. So we come into the closure. So how would you like to leave audience with? What would you like them to try based on listening? What would you like them to play with? What is our call for action for people who are listening to this?
I would invite people to see the organism under the organization. In Colombia, there was a joke that the most powerful lady in any company was the lady who passed around the coffees in the morning. La que pasa el tinto. Because she knew everybody. She knew what they were up to. She knew how they were feeling. She got the best gossip. She had her tentacles everywhere and access to the best information, you know? And I know that there's many people who work with this, how to make the seen unseen, and how to, how to map, the nodes within an organization, and how certain rituals are played out. But I would invite people just to be a little bit more conscientious of it, to say, hey, do it through music. Personally, obviously, once you understand that, it becomes a drug, because once you experience music like that, it's like eating an organic, beautiful aubergine with natural ingredients prepared with love versus going to McDonald's. All of a sudden, you're like, no, I want that. But that begins by really having an appreciation for something. So with the music, it's an act of initiation. But to actually take off the veil and see what's under the organization is something you can do every day. Who actually is influencing? And there's a very beautiful word by a governance professor of mine called Primavera de Filippi, who speaks of institutions. So an institution, so an institution is, we kind of think it's square. It's something that's very organized, very highly defined rules and roles, very much, everything's articulated on paper with very concrete procedures. But there's something that precedes the institution. And she calls it an exstitution. So if the institution does scaffolding, the exstitution is the drive. It's like wow, this is so much fun. So she says revolutions are exstitutional. Fan clubs are exstitutional. Enterprises, when they are born, are exstitutional. When people, it's like, hey, I got a bit of money, you got a bit of money. I see the vision, you see the vision. I'm excited. And a lot of kind of telepathic, almost back and forth happens, and something just comes up. And then when it starts kind of taking form, then you institutionalize, and then you create the scaffolding. So especially in organizations where the institutions have become too heavy, where they just don't serve anymore, it's important to understand that they're fiction. We can rewrite it. But what is the real institutional value of that? What gets people excited? What makes them, dream and feel that, hey, we can do this together? That requires really undermining the importance of the institution and going to the very bottom of it. And I don't know if it's interesting, but I can close with this very interesting thing. So there's Salim Ismail, right? He wrote the book on exponential organizations, used to be the head of Singularity University. He has a very beautiful way of describing change within organizations through the idea of an autoimmune response. That organizations have an autoimmune response. And mostly it's paperwork and the fear, it's too difficult. We're going to have to, clear this. It's too difficult. So he says, always go to the periphery of an organization, the very periphery, to do what's exciting, where you're not playing against the institutional baggage. Just go somewhere where you can experiment. And so those are all the kind of the labs which big companies create, or I don't know, Lockheed had Skunk Works, so where people can go crazy and do their thing. And find those kinds of spaces, very often it's the coffee room, it's the lunch room, it's the informal gatherings, it's the musical circles led by Jurgis Didžiulis. It's the space where you can go to the very edge of the organization, leave that organizational institutional scaffolding to the side, and say, what else is there? Let's allow ourselves to dream. So just really give the opportunity, for people to understand that organizational structure is fiction. It's just a shared fiction, something we made up to make this work. But what has been serving us as human beings for hundreds of thousands of years to aggregate potential, to become more than the sum of our parts, is this ability to come together as a tribe. And that has to be exercised. As I say, the most important muscle of all is the one right here. And if you're not exercising that, you can't leverage that potential.
Aggregating potential. I love it. So thank you so much, Jurgis, for joining us. It was such an elevated conversation. We're always happy to get people who can elevate our consciousness and get us to think beyond the boundaries and beyond what we think is possible, and to really pinpoint the essence. What I leave, with talking to you, is that the essential conversation when you took us to really consider very important points that really make organization to shift into the organism, and they create this exceptional togetherness that we can all perform, strive, and be the best possible version of ourselves, and ultimately realize our potential. So thank you so much for being with us today. It was joy and honor and pleasure. I've learned so much. I'm sure everybody who is listening learned so much. And to all of you who is joining this podcast, thank you so much for being with us week after week. Thank you so much for commenting. Our Spotify is going even higher and higher. Thank you so much for sharing, and keep on tuning in for more interesting topics and more interesting conversations. Bye for now. Thank you so much once again.
Ciao, ciao.